Houston. The Israel-Iran conflict remains one of the most complex and consequential geopolitical struggles in recent memory. Yesterday, President Trump announced a complete and total ceasefire between Israel and Iran, aiming to bring an end to what was dubbed the 12-day war. With regional stability hanging in the balance, the stakes couldn't be higher. To help us make sense of this ever-evolving situation, we welcome Dr. Asher Lubotzky, and an Israel Institute teaching fellow in the Department of Political Science at the University of Houston. Dr. Lubotzky brings deep expertise in Israeli politics, Middle Eastern affairs, and international relations, and we're honored to have his insights today. You can join the conversation. If you have questions for Dr. Lubotzky, you can call or send us a text to 713-440-8870. Dr. Lubotzky, welcome to Hello Houston. Thanks for joining Frank and I.
Thank you for having me.
So there's been a lot of question on the status of the ceasefire. President Trump posted on Truth Social the ceasefire had gone into effect on Tuesday evening, but there are questions on when it went into effect for both countries. Can you talk to us about that? Elaborate on what is happening and what is current.
Yes, so far the ceasefire is being kept. It started in the morning, Middle Eastern time, in the morning of yesterday, Tuesday. There was probably one missile shot from Iran around 10 a.m., so about 2 or 3 hours after the ceasefire was supposed to kick in. Israel got mad about this and already thought about retaliation, sent airplanes in the air, but President Trump stopped it. That was Tuesday morning, around 10, 11 a.m. Israel time. And since then, so already over 24 hours, ceasefire is kept so far, and it looks like it's going to be kept as much as we can predict about the future.
How long do you think realistically that this ceasefire can continue?
Ceasefire with what is a ceasefire too, right? We can
Yes.
talk about
Elaborate on
this
that.
too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because Iran works in different ways, Israel works in different ways to work against each other, right? So what we saw in the last 12 days, 2 weeks, was a direct clash between Iran and Israel, right? This is pretty rare, and this is very highly painful for both nations, for both countries, right? This is a full-scale war between two very strong militaries. This, I think, as we see now, will be maintained. The ceasefire here will be maintained, at least, probably, at least in the next few months. But the two countries also clash in other ways that are below the level of full-scale war, right?
Mm-hmm.
Iran employs proxies around the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Hezbollah from Lebanon is one of the most prominent ones, but also the Houthis are considered to be proxies. There are proxies in Iraq. Some people see Hamas, although it's more complicated than that. Some people see Hamas in Gaza. So Iran has other ways to act against Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And Iran can support or encourage those proxies to act against Israel. By the way, they didn't succeed to do that in the last war, in the last 12-day war, right? Because Hezbollah has been beaten pretty hard by Israel about a year ago. But there is this proxy war. So proxy war can continue, right? This is not included in the ceasefire deal, right? This is one thing. Another thing that is not included in the ceasefire deal is, for example, is that Israel can work in, undercover or things that are below the radar without official responsibility taken against some Iranian targets. For example, we saw during the war too that Israeli intelligence services, the Mossad most importantly, right, works in Iran. We know it in for the last decade and more that Israel has been doing operations, covert operations in Iran mostly against nuclear targets,
Mm-hmm.
nuclear scientists, and so on. So these things may also continue. Because it's not included in this kind of ceasefire that we are talking about.
Yeah, so some things may calm down. Do you think without a regime change, it will really ever change?
That's a great question. That's a great question. So I do not think it will change without a regime change. The regime in Iran is, in the end, publicly ideologically, right? It's not a realistic, opportunistic, policy. It's an ideological policy for the last 46 years, right?
And that policy is
Of
get rid of Israel.
The policy is get rid of Israel and get rid of American presence in the Middle East. They see Israel as kind of as it is, right, a very strong ally of the United States. So this is not something that we see change in the fundamental way, right, in the ideological way, right? They may say, oh, all right, the last 2 weeks were very painful. Let's scale down what we do. Let's do it in different ways, maybe. Let's do it more covert. We need time to rebuild. We need time to restore our capabilities. So that may happen, but I don't see the Iranian regime as it is right now changing its basic ideology of getting rid of Israel and getting rid of American interest in the Middle East.
You're listening to Hello Houston, and we are talking to Dr. Asher Lubotzky, an Israel Institute teaching fellow in the Department of Political Science at the University of Houston. You can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. Joining us now is a call from Jeff from Northwest Houston, who has a question for Dr. Lubotzky. Jeff, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hello, thank you. My question is, the Israeli military is highly praised. The Mossad, their secret infiltrations, the things they do, the bombs that they put in the pagers, the attack on Iran. How is it that on October 6th, they were caught so unprepared that for basically the whole day, Hamas just waltzed through the country without so much as a howdy-do? I'm just puzzled by that. It just doesn't pass the smell test for me, if you can respond.
That's a great question. That's a great question. We're still asking ourselves, but let's point out to something very important here. Both in Lebanon and in Iran, Israel was prepared. Israel was planning to do things for years. There were operations, there was intelligence being collected, and once you're prepared and once you decide when to start, you can get very great achievements, right? But if you don't see an entity as the main enemy, for example, Hamas, okay? If you don't see Hamas as something that is threatening you, right? For real, now, a few rockets here and there, that's what people thought, maybe a little strike in or there from Hamas against Israel. But if you don't see Hamas as a strong military entity that can actually attack you all out one day, you are not prepared for that. You don't even imagine this, okay? Just like the Americans could not imagine 9/11, right? We just couldn't imagine, couldn't see airplanes coming into the World Trade Center, right? So when you can't imagine it, it's hard for you to get prepared for it. And the Israeli intelligence and the Israeli operations so always in the last 2 decades, I've seen Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon as the main enemies. And they got prepared, and they did a great job, as we saw, and as you mentioned, they did, in military terms, they did a good job. Hamas was seen as a movement that wants to keep quiet. They want to keep their rule over Gaza and not get into those kind of wars that the Israelis thought that Hamas knew that they are going to be defeated. So why would Hamas even start a war with us? We're so much stronger than Hamas, right? So when you cannot imagine the scenario, you can be caught unprepared.
Yeah, I was thinking that exact thing, that we really aren't in a position to make judgment on preparation in this country because we've seen it happen here. James from the Woodlands has a comment for you, sir. James, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. The way that I see a solution to this is regime change. Mm-hmm. We need to get rid of the mullahs that are there, the Islamic State. We need to get rid of that and have it go back to a secular society. I think there's overwhelming support. The true evil, the people who've caused this crisis is the rulers, the dictators of Iran.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah, James, you're right. I think that Dr. Lubotzky absolutely agrees with you. We did refer to that. I have a question. When you were saying that, of course, Hamas and the Houthis are all going to still be there, what do you think that means to cells, or at least purported cells, here in the United States? Will they take action against Americans?
The question is, well, we assume that there are cells, right? Also from your questions, we assume that there are cells in the United States. I think that if they are, the question is, if are they capable of doing anything, right? Are they in a situation, in operational situation, capability to even do something? Maybe they are just at the beginning. Maybe they didn't find the right time to attack yet. So the question is their capabilities, and another question is a decision, right? Is there a decision to attack within the United States, right? We obviously do not know the answer. We suspect that Iran, maybe other terrorist organizations, got people into the United States. We suspect it. We see there were some arrests here and there. I mean, I do not have a definitive action, right? Answer here. I assume that because of the ceasefire, Iran will not want to do something against the United States right now. So I would say that probably right now it's a bit safer time.
Okay, another quick question. Are there any countries in the Middle East, or which ones, that don't support the American action from last Sunday?
Okay, so now you need to differentiate between an open public endorsement and the kind of behind the scene endorsements, right? Support.
I get that.
Right? This is very important in the Middle East. Okay,
Yes.
This is a very important thing. I would say that most countries, most sovereign states in the Middle East were not too upset by Iran getting hit by both Israel and the United States. Okay, we're talking about Saudi Arabia, and we're talking about Egypt and Syria, and even Turkey. Okay, so behind the scene, there's not much love for Iran. Okay, and all their kind of involvement in other countries' affairs, right? Openly, though, publicly, because of many different considerations, some countries have to say things. It's mostly meant for their own domestic publics. And most of those countries somehow lightly or not so lightly kind of condemned the American attack, or at least, showed concern or expressed concern, right? That's publicly. But we need to always understand that there is the public thing and there is behind the scenes. And some people in the administration, the American administration, already said that a lot of those countries, the Gulf countries, actually were very happy with what the Americans were doing. And I tend to believe that it's true. And yeah, so Iran doesn't have too many friends in the Middle East, which is important to note.
Silence is golden sometimes.
We have a call from Seth from the Heights with a question for Dr. Lubotzky. Seth, welcome to Hello Houston.
Seth, are you there?
Yes. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We can hear you now, yeah.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. One comment I had first was I think it's important to recognize this talk of cells and, the Iranian government and all that. Let's please distinguish between the people and the regime. There's 1.5 or 2 million Iranians here, and all of us are feeling scared. We hate that regime as much as anyone else. We're not terrorists, and we don't want to be associated with them. We feel for our safety. There are right-wing extremists here in the U.S. making comments about how there are 2 million proxies in the United States. Not a single Iranian American has ever engaged in an act of terrorism. And if the U.S. government asked Iranian Americans to step up and help crack down on these potential terrorist cells, every one of us would volunteer to help. So that's the first part. The question I have, and I would love to get your guest point of view on it, is if Israel had the opportunity to take the snake's head off, right, to kill the supreme leader, to really target the regime, to support regime change, why wasn't that done?
It's a good question.
Dr. Lubotzky, what is your response to that question?
Right. Thank you very much. First, I totally endorse your message at the beginning, right? There's the correspondence, right? That it's not the Iranian regime, the Islamic Republic, right, of Iran, and the Iranian people are definitely not the same thing. We don't think there is too much legitimacy to this regime, especially not from Iranians in the diaspora. And as you see, some of the people that were kind of disappointed by the ceasefire, many of them were Iranians in the diaspora, right? That they actually wanted it to go all the way and end up in a regime change, right? So definitely this distinction is very important, and thank you for making it. Regarding going for all the way, so there is some kind of hesitations in America, but also in Israel, from the idea that foreign countries can just to initiate, a regime change somewhere else, right? The United States, as you all know, tried to do it not so successfully in several places in the last 2 decades. Israel kind of tried to do it in Lebanon in the early 1980s, also wasn't very successful. So countries are kind of like, they're reluctant to go all the way because they know that, you start this and then you don't know how it ends up. Although I do believe that there's not many other scenarios that can be worse from this current regime in Iran, right? But still, you can think about the chaos that may ensue. You can think about, civil war in Iran, and then like even a more extreme things that will not hesitate to use, to go all the way for nuclear missile stuff like that. So I'm saying that foreign countries know that they are very limited in what they can do. So what the Israelis say, what the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and others say, is that was not part of our goals in this war, right? In this operation, the goals were not to change the regime, but if it will help the Iranian people to rise up, right, and oppose the regime and make a new revolution, that would be great. And therefore, some targets were attacked that were connected to regime stability. For example, the notorious prison in Iran, where a lot of regime oppositionists, right, are locked and tortured, was attacked by Israel.
Okay.
Now that's in the end, Israel is acting from the air, right?
Yeah.
From the aerial space. It's very limited in actually doing things on the ground.
Dr. Asher Lubotzky is an Israel Institute teaching fellow in the Department of Political Science at the University of Houston. Dr. Lubotzky, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
After the break.